I never imagined that the happiest night I had planned would turn into the worst moment of my entire life. The ballroom looked like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting warm golden light across the room. White roses and orchids covered every table. The champagne fountain in the center sparkled under the lights, bubbles rising endlessly like tiny diamonds. I had spent 6 weeks planning every single detail of this party for Daniel's 31st birthday. 150 guests filled the space, his colleagues, our friends, family members, and important business contacts. Everyone was dressed in their finest clothes, laughing and celebrating. I stood near the champagne fountain in my emerald green dress. The one Daniel said made my eyes shine. My feet hurt a little from the heels, but I didn't care. Seeing everyone enjoy themselves made all the hard work worth it. The band was playing soft jazz music, and waiters moved smoothly through the crowd, carrying trays of expensive appetizers I had carefully selected. Daniel was across the room talking to his college friends, his face bright with happiness. Every few minutes he would catch my eye and smile, and my heart would feel so full. This was supposed to be perfect. This was supposed to show his family that I loved him, that I cared about making him happy, that I belonged in his world. Then I saw them walking toward me, Patricia and Richard Ashford, my in-laws. Patricia wore a cream-colored designer dress, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun that made her face look sharp and cold. Richard walked beside her in an expensive dark suit, his tall frame and stern expression making people step aside as they approached. Something about the way they moved made my stomach tighten. Their faces weren't friendly. They weren't smiling like everyone else at the party. "Olivia, we need to talk to you," Patricia said when they reached me. Her voice was sweet like honey, but there was something hard underneath it, like steel wrapped in silk. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "Is everything okay? Are you enjoying the party?" The party is lovely," Richard said, but his tone suggested he didn't mean it as a compliment. "You clearly know how to spend money." Other guests nearby started glancing over at us. I could feel eyes turning in our direction. "We've been patient long enough," Patricia said, louder now. More people stopped talking. The music seemed to fade into the background. "We need to discuss your apartment." My heart started beating faster. "My apartment? I don't understand." "The $10 million penthouse you bought," Richard said, his voice rising so others could definitely hear now. "The one you've been living in while your husband's parents struggle to make ends meet." Heat rushed to my face. People were definitely staring now, forming a loose circle around us. I could see curious faces, raised eyebrows, people leaning in to hear better. "That apartment is mine," I said quietly, trying to keep this private, even though they were clearly making it public. "I bought it with money I earned from my company, before Daniel and I even got married. Family shares everything," Patricia said, stepping closer to me. Her perfume was strong and made my nose itch. "You're part of this family now, Olivia. That means what's yours is ours. We need you to sign those papers and transfer the apartment to us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The room felt like it was spinning. I looked past them, searching for Daniel, but he was still across the room, completely unaware of what was happening. "I can't do that," I said, my voice shaking. "That's my home. I worked so hard for it. I started my business in a tiny dorm room, with nothing. I saved every dollar for years." "We don't care about your little rags to riches story," Richard interrupted, his face turning red. "You married into this family. You have responsibilities. We're getting older. We need somewhere proper to live. That apartment has 4 bedrooms. You and Daniel only need 1. But the circle of guests around us had grown larger. I could hear whispers starting, see people pulling out their phones. Someone was probably recording this. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. "Please," I said, hating how my voice sounded like begging. "Can we talk about this privately? This is Daniel's birthday party. We shouldn't." "Don't tell us what we should or shouldn't do," Patricia snapped. Her sweet mask was completely gone now. Her face was twisted with anger. And something else. Something that looked like hatred. "You think you're so special because you made some money. You think that makes you better than us. You're nothing but a common girl who got lucky." The least you can do is take care of your husband's family. Tears started burning in my eyes. I blinked hard, trying to keep them from falling. Everyone was watching. Everyone could hear Patricia calling me common, hear her saying I was nothing. These were Daniel's colleagues, people I had to face at future events, friends who would remember this forever. "I'm sorry you're struggling," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've offered to help in other ways. I paid for your vacation last Christmas. I bought you that car when yours broke down. But I can't give you my apartment. It's not right. Please try to understand." The slap came out of nowhere. Patricia's hand connected with my left cheek so hard that my head snapped to the side. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot, the sharp crack of skin hitting skin. For a second, everything went completely silent. Even the band stopped playing. The pain exploded across my face, hot and stinging, bringing instant tears to my eyes. I lifted my hand to my cheek, feeling the heat radiating from where she hit me. My skin was burning. I could already tell it would leave a mark. 150 people stood frozen, staring at me with wide eyes and open mouths. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence was worse than the slap somehow. It meant everyone saw, everyone knew, and nobody was doing anything to help me. Patricia stood there breathing hard, her hand still raised slightly, her face filled with rage. Richard stood beside her, not looking shocked or apologetic, but satisfied, like I had gotten what I deserved. I looked across the room at Daniel. He was standing now, his face pale and confused, finally realizing something was wrong. But he didn't move. He just stood there, frozen like everyone else, his mouth open but no words coming out. The tears I had been fighting spilled down my cheeks, hot, humiliating tears that I couldn't stop. My face throbbed with pain. My heart felt like it was breaking into 1,000 pieces, not just because of the slap, but because my husband, the man who promised to love and protect me, was doing nothing while his mother assaulted me in front of everyone we knew. I couldn't breathe. The room was too small, too crowded, too full of staring eyes and judging faces. I needed to get out. I needed to leave right now before I completely fell apart in front of all these people. I grabbed my small purse from the nearby table, with shaking hands. My heels clicked loudly against the marble floor as I turned and walked toward the exit. Each step felt like it took forever. I could feel everyone's eyes following me, could hear the whispers starting like a wave building behind me. "Did you see that? She actually slapped her. Oh my God, someone got that on video. What was that about an apartment?" Their voices mixed together into a horrible buzzing sound in my ears. I walked faster, almost running now, my vision blurred with tears. The golden ballroom that had looked so beautiful minutes ago now felt like a prison, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I pushed through the heavy doors and stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my purse. My cheek was on fire, throbbing with each heartbeat. But worse than the physical pain was the crushing weight of humiliation and betrayal pressing down on my chest. I had done everything right. I had been kind and generous. I had worked hard and earned everything I owned honestly. I had loved Daniel with my whole heart. And this was what I got in return, slapped like a disobedient child in front of everyone I knew, while my husband stood silent and did nothing to protect me. 6 months earlier, life felt completely different. I sat across from Grace at our favorite small cafe, the one we discovered during our college years when we were too broke to afford anything fancy. The coffee was still just as cheap and just as good as I remembered. "We did it," Grace said, holding up her mug to toast with mine. "The Henderson Tech contract is officially ours. $3.2 million, Olivia. Do you realize what this means?" I clinked my mug against hers, feeling happiness bubble up inside me like the foam on my cappuccino. It means we can finally hire that team we've been talking about. And maybe get an actual office instead of working from my living room. Grace laughed, her dark eyes sparkling. "Remember when we started coding that first prototype in our dorm room? You had that ancient laptop that sounded like a jet engine every time you opened more than 3 programs. And you survived on instant noodles for 2 months straight. Because you spent all your money on programming books," I added. smiling at the memory. Those days felt like another lifetime. Back then, I was just a scholarship kid, trying to make something of myself. My mother worked 2 jobs my entire childhood, cleaning offices at night and waiting tables during the day. I watched her come home exhausted every single evening, her feet swollen and her back aching. She never complained, but I saw the pain in her eyes. I promised myself I would build something better, not just for me, but for her too. I put myself through college, with scholarships and part-time jobs. Grace and I met in our first computer science class, the only 2 girls in a room full of boys who didn't think we belonged there. We proved them all wrong. We studied until 3 in the morning most nights, teaching ourselves things our professors never covered, building programs just to see if we could. Our software company started as a crazy dream. Now, 5 years later, we had real clients, real contracts, and real success. The Henderson deal was our biggest yet, and it meant everything we had worked for was finally paying off. "Your mum must be so proud," Grace said softly, like she could read my thoughts. "She cried when I told her," I admitted. Happy tears. She kept saying she always knew I would do something amazing. And Daniel, what did he say about the contract?" My smile grew wider. "He took me to that Italian restaurant downtown to celebrate. He was so excited, Grace. He kept telling everyone we met that his brilliant wife just landed a huge deal. He made me feel like I could conquer the world." Daniel had been so supportive during the early struggles of building my company. When I worked late nights, he would bring me dinner and sit with me, even when he had early meetings the next morning. When I doubted myself, he reminded me how talented I was. He made me feel safe and loved. "Speaking of Daniel," Grace said carefully, "have you met his parents yet?" I shifted in my seat, my happiness dimming slightly. "A few times. They live about 2 hours away, so they don't visit often." "And how do they treat you?" I thought about how to answer honestly. "They're polite. Patricia always looks at everything in my apartment like she's trying to figure out how much it costs. Last time she visited, she commented that my couch looked cheap and suggested I should invest in better furniture now that I'm part of their family." Grace frowned. "That's rude." "Daniel says his mom just has strong opinions about decorating. She used to be an interior designer before she retired." "And his father?" "Richard barely talks to me. He asks Daniel about work, but never asks me about my company. It's like he doesn't think what I do is important or real." Grace reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You know your work is important, right? You built something incredible from nothing. Don't let anyone make you feel small." "I know," I said, meaning it. "Daniel reminds me of that too. He says his parents just need time to get used to having me in the family. They're very traditional. Patricia wanted Daniel to marry someone from their social circle, someone whose family they already knew. But he chose you instead." "He chose me." I agreed, warmth spreading through my chest at the thought. The waitress brought our food simple sandwiches that reminded me of simpler times. Grace changed the subject to office furniture shopping, making me laugh with her terrible ideas about beanbag chairs and disco balls. But even as I laughed and planned and celebrated our success, a tiny uncomfortable feeling sat in the back of my mind. Something about the way Patricia looked at me during her last visit. Something about how Richard's eyes followed me around my apartment, calculating and cold. I pushed the feeling away. I was just being paranoid. Daniel loved me. We were building a beautiful life together. His parents would come around eventually. Everything was going to be fine. I had no idea how wrong I was. 2 months before Daniel's birthday party, everything started changing in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. Patricia and Richard began visiting every single weekend. They would call Daniel on Friday afternoons and announce they were coming to stay with us for a few days. No asking if it was convenient. No checking if we had plans. Just showing up with their expensive luggage and taking over our guest room like they owned the place. I tried to be a good host. I cooked elaborate dinners, bought Patricia's favorite wine, made sure the guest bathroom had fresh towels, and the expensive soap she liked. But nothing I did seemed good enough. "Olivia, dear," Patricia said one Saturday morning, running her finger along my kitchen counter, like she was checking for dust. Don't you think this apartment is a bit much for just 2 people? 4 bedrooms seems excessive. I was making coffee, trying to wake up after they had kept us up late the night before, with stories about their country club friends. Daniel and I like having space. 1 bedroom is my office, and we're hoping to start a family eventually, so we wanted extra rooms. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. A family? How nice. Of course, Richard and I are getting older. We've been thinking about our living situation too. Something about the way she said it made my hands tighten around the coffee pot. Are you thinking of moving somewhere new? We're exploring options, Richard said from behind his newspaper at the kitchen table. Real estate is expensive these days. Not all of us got lucky like you did. Lucky. That word stung like a bee. I didn't get lucky. I worked myself nearly to exhaustion building my company. I earned every single dollar that bought this apartment. Maybe I could help you look at some properties, I offered, trying to be kind. I know a good real estate agent who helped me find this place. How generous, Patricia said in a tone that didn't sound grateful at all, though I'm sure anything in our price range would be far below the standards we're accustomed to. The visits got worse. 2 weeks later, Richard brought up his new business venture over dinner. He wanted to start another real estate development company, after his last one failed 3 years ago. I just need some initial investment capital, he explained, cutting into the expensive steak I had cooked. Maybe $200,000 to get things started. Once it takes off, the returns will be substantial. Daniel looked uncomfortable, pushing food around his plate. I felt trapped between wanting to help and knowing this was a bad idea. That's a lot of money, I said carefully. Have you put together a business plan? I'd be happy to look at the numbers and projections. Richard's face turned red. I've been in real estate for 30 years. I don't need a child who got lucky with some computer program telling me how to run a business. Dad, Daniel said quietly. But Richard kept going. Your generation thinks you know everything because you can type fast and use social media. Real business takes experience and connections, things you can't learn from YouTube videos. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and anger. I wasn't some kid who got lucky. I had a degree in computer science. I built complex software that major companies paid millions to use. But I swallowed my pride and changed the subject. Patricia started making comments about my clothes, my hair, my choice of friends. She would look at Grace with barely hidden disgust when she stopped by, whispering to Daniel that I should surround myself with more sophisticated people now that I was in Ashford. The worst part was watching Daniel shrink smaller and smaller with each visit. He stopped defending me. When his mother made cutting remarks, he would find excuses to leave the room. When his father demanded things, Daniel would just nod and change the subject later. One night, after his parents finally left, I found Daniel sitting on our bedroom floor, with his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he whispered. They're just stressed about money. Once Dad's business gets going, they'll be easier to deal with. Daniel, I don't think we should invest in your father's company. His last 3 businesses failed. I worked too hard for this money to... So it's your money now? Daniel looked up at me with hurt in his eyes. I thought we were partners. I thought marriage meant sharing everything. We do share everything, I said, feeling confused and frustrated. But $200,000 for a risky investment is different than regular expenses. This is my company, my life's work. Your company, your money, your apartment, Daniel said bitterly. Maybe my parents are right. Maybe you did trap me. His words felt like a slap. I stood there, staring at the man I loved, wondering when he had started sounding exactly like his parents. That's when I knew things were falling apart. But I didn't know how to stop it. I sat in my car in the dark parking garage, my whole body shaking. The leather seat felt cold against my back, even though the night was warm. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold my phone. The parking garage was quiet, except for the hum of fluorescent lights above me, and the distant sound of cars passing on the street outside. I could still hear the party music faintly through the concrete walls. Still picture all those faces staring at me. Still feel the burning pain on my cheek where Patricia's hand had connected. My phone kept buzzing. Text messages lighting up the screen one after another. Daniel, Where are you? Daniel. Olivia. Please come back. Daniel. We need to talk about this. Daniel. My parents didn't mean it. I stared at that last message until the words blurred. Didn't mean it. She slapped me in front of 150 people, and he thought she didn't mean it. More messages came from numbers I recognized, guests from the party. Some were kind, asking if I was okay. Others were probably just looking for gossip to spread around tomorrow. I ignored all of them. My reflection stared back at me from the rearview mirror. My makeup was ruined, black mascara streaks running down both cheeks. My left cheek was bright red, already starting to swell slightly. My carefully styled hair had come loose from its pins. I looked like a completely different person from the confident woman who had walked into that ballroom 3 hours ago. I touched my cheek gently and winced. The pain was still sharp and hot, but the pain in my chest was worse. The crushing feeling of betrayal, of humiliation, of realizing that the man I married would stand silent while his mother attacked me. My finger hovered over Daniel's name in my contacts. Part of me wanted to call him, wanted to hear him say he was sorry, that he would fix this, that he would choose me over them. But I knew he wouldn't. He had already made his choice by doing nothing. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts until I found a different name. Robert Montgomery. I stared at it for a long moment, my thumb shaking over the call button. Robert had been my mentor since I was 21 years old. I met him at a tech conference, where I had somehow talked my way into attending, even though I couldn't afford the ticket. I was volunteering at the registration desk, just to be in the building, to listen to the speakers, to learn anything I could. Robert gave a keynote speech about innovation and taking risks that changed my entire life. After his speech, I gathered all my courage and approached him. I told him about my ideas, about the software I was building in my dorm room, about my dreams of starting my own company. Most successful people would have brushed off a broke college kid. But Robert listened, really listened. He saw something in me that day. He became more than a mentor. He invested in my first real office space. He introduced me to clients who took chances on my young company. He gave me advice when I wanted to quit. He celebrated my successes like a proud father. When my actual father had never been in my life, Robert filled that empty space, without ever making me feel like I owed him anything. I pressed the call button before I could change my mind. The phone rang once, twice. Then his familiar deep voice answered. Olivia? What's wrong? Just hearing his concern made the tears come faster. I tried to speak, but only a sob came out. Olivia, talk to me. Are you hurt? Where are you? I'm okay, I managed to say, though my voice sounded broken and small. I mean, I'm not okay, but I'm safe. I'm in my car. Tell me what happened. The words poured out of me, like water from a broken dam. I told him everything. About Patricia and Richard, demanding my apartment. About their months of pressure and cruel comments. About the slap that echoed through the ballroom. About Daniel standing frozen, doing absolutely nothing to protect me. About running out in front of everyone while they all watched and whispered. The silence on the other end of the phone was heavy and dangerous. When Robert finally spoke, his voice was colder than I had ever heard it. Stay where you are. Don't go back inside. I'm handling this. Robert, I don't want to cause trouble. Trouble? His laugh was harsh and angry. They cause trouble the moment they put their hands on you. You've been nothing but gracious to those people, Olivia. You've tried to help them. You've been patient and kind. And they humiliated you publicly. Assaulted you in front of witnesses. This ends tonight. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago, when you first told me they were pressuring you. I'm going to make sure they understand exactly who they decided to mess with. My heart was pounding. Robert, I'll be there in 30 minutes. Stay in your car. Lock the doors. And Olivia? Yes? You did nothing wrong. Do you understand me? Nothing. What happened tonight is not your fault. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness holding my phone, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Someone finally had my back. Someone was finally going to stand up for me. And somehow, that made me cry even harder. 30 minutes passed like hours in that dark parking garage. I sat in my car, watching the clock on my dashboard tick forward, my heart beating harder with each passing minute. I didn't know what Robert was planning, but I knew him well enough to know that when he used that cold, angry voice, something serious was about to happen. Finally, I couldn't stay away anymore. I needed to see this. Whatever was coming, I deserved to witness it. After everything they had put me through, I checked my face in the mirror one more time. The swelling on my cheek had gotten worse, the red mark turning into a purple bruise that no amount of makeup could hide now. I wiped away the mascara streaks as best I could, fixed my hair with shaking hands, and took 3 deep breaths before stepping out of the car. My heels clicked against the concrete as I walked back toward the hotel. Each step felt heavy, like my legs were filled with cement. The elevator ride up to the ballroom floor felt endless. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, loud and fast. When the elevator doors opened, I could hear the noise from the ballroom immediately. It sounded different now. Chaotic. Tense. The music had stopped completely. Voices were raised, talking over each other in sharp, angry tones. I walked slowly down the hallway and stopped just outside the ballroom doors, staying hidden, where I could see inside, but most people wouldn't notice me. The scene inside had changed completely from the elegant party I had planned. At least 40 guests had left, leaving empty tables and half-finished champagne glasses scattered around. The remaining guests had formed tight clusters, some standing on chairs to see better. All of them focused on the center of the room where Patricia and Richard stood. They weren't cowering or apologizing. Instead, they were holding court, like royalty, surrounded by a small group of their friends and supporters. Patricia's voice carried across the room, loud and dramatic. "We only asked for what any reasonable family would expect," she was saying, her hand pressed against her chest like she was the victim. "We've struggled financially, while she lives in luxury. Is it so wrong for parents to ask their daughter-in-law to help family, to share what she has?" Several older guests were nodding along, murmuring agreement. Richard stood beside her, looking stern and righteous, his arms crossed over his chest. "She's poisoned our son against us," Richard added, his voice booming. "Daniel used to be close with his family. Now he barely calls us. She's driven a wedge between us, with her selfishness and greed." I felt sick watching them twist the story, making themselves look like poor, mistreated parents, instead of the bullies they actually were. Some guests were eating it up, looking at each other and shaking their heads like they felt sorry for Patricia and Richard. Daniel sat alone at a table near the wall, his head buried in his hands. He looked miserable, but he still wasn't saying anything to defend me. Thomas, Daniel's younger brother, stood a few feet away from their parents, his face red with anger. "That's not true, and you know it," Thomas said loudly, cutting through Patricia's dramatic performance. "I was here. I saw what happened. You demanded her apartment, and when she said no, Mum slapped her. In front of everyone. You can't just rewrite reality because you don't like how it makes you look." "Stay out of this, Thomas," Richard snapped. "This is between us and Olivia." "No, it's between you and basic human decency," Thomas shot back. "You've been harassing her for months. I've watched you pressure her, insult her, demand her money. She's been nothing but kind to you, and this is how you repay her?" Before Richard could respond, the massive ballroom doors suddenly swung open, with a loud bang that made everyone jump. The heavy wooden doors slammed against the walls, and the entire room fell completely silent. A man walked through those doors, like he owned not just the room, but the entire building. Robert Montgomery. Tall, distinguished, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His silver hair was neat, his posture straight and commanding. 2 people in sharp business attire followed behind him, each carrying expensive leather folders. I watched from my hidden spot, as recognition rippled through the crowd like a wave. Gasps echoed around the room. Several people pulled out their phones immediately. Everyone knew who Robert Montgomery was. His face had been on the cover of business magazines. He gave speeches at technology conferences around the world. He was worth billions, and he had just walked into Daniel's birthday party. Patricia's confident smile flickered like a candle in the wind. The colour drained from Richard's face, leaving him pale and suddenly much older looking. The friends who had been supporting them seconds ago took small steps backward, suddenly not wanting to be associated with whatever was about to happen. Robert's eyes scanned the ballroom slowly, taking in every detail: the scattered guests, the abandoned champagne glasses, Daniel sitting alone looking guilty, Thomas standing apart from his parents. And finally, his gaze locked onto Patricia and Richard, like a predator spotting prey. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority that made the entire room lean forward to hear. "We need to talk. Now." Robert walked to the center of the ballroom, his footsteps echoing in the complete silence. The two people with him positioned themselves on either side, their folders held professionally against their chests. Everyone watched him like he was a king entering his throne room. He didn't rush. He took his time, letting the tension build, until the air felt thick with it. When he finally stopped walking, he stood perfectly still, his eyes moving from Patricia to Richard and back again. "My name is Robert Montgomery," he began, though everyone already knew who he was. "Some of you might recognize me from the technology industry. What you might not know is that I've been Olivia Chen's mentor since she was 21 years old." Whispers erupted around the room. Guests looked at each other with wide eyes. This connection was news to most of them. "I met Olivia at a conference when she was still in college," Robert continued, his voice steady and clear. "She was volunteering at the registration desk because she couldn't afford a ticket. But she had something most people never have: a brilliant mind, incredible work ethic, and the kind of determination that builds empires. I've watched her grow from a scared kid with big dreams into one of the most talented entrepreneurs I've ever worked with." Patricia tried to interrupt. "Mr. Montgomery, I'm sure you mean well, but this is a family matter." "Be quiet," Robert said simply, and Patricia's mouth snapped shut, like someone had pulled a string. I'm not finished." The room somehow got even quieter. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. "I've been hearing about your treatment of Olivia for months now," Robert said, looking directly at Patricia and Richard. "The constant pressure, the demands for money, the insults about her background, the harassment every single weekend. She told me bits and pieces, but she was too kind, too hopeful, that you would eventually accept her. She kept making excuses for you." Richard's face was turning red, but he didn't speak. He looked like a balloon, slowly filling with air, ready to pop. "Tonight, you crossed a line that can't be uncrossed," Robert continued. "You publicly demanded that Olivia hand over property she purchased with money she earned through years of hard work. And when she rightfully refused, you assaulted her in front of 150 witnesses." He paused, letting those words sink in. Several guests had their phones out now, definitely recording everything. "Assault is a crime," Robert said quietly. "A very serious crime, especially when committed in front of this many witnesses." Patricia let out a nervous laugh that sounded fake and desperate. "It was just a family disagreement, a little slap. Surely, we don't need to be so dramatic about a little slap." Thomas stepped forward, his voice shaking with anger. "You hit her so hard the sound echoed through this entire room. Her face is bruised. Everyone here saw it. Don't try to minimize what you did." One of the people standing with Robert stepped forward and opened their leather folder. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, attorney at law. I've been documenting everything on Mr. Montgomery's instructions, including tonight's assault. We have witness statements, video footage from multiple phones, and photographic evidence of Mrs. Ashford's injury. We're prepared to press criminal charges unless certain conditions are met." Patricia's confident mask cracked completely. Her face went pale. Her hands started shaking. Richard opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "But let's talk about the real reason you targeted Olivia," Robert said, and something in his voice made my stomach drop even from where I was watching. "You're not just struggling financially. You're drowning." He nodded to the second person with him, a man in glasses who opened his folder and pulled out several documents. "I had my financial team investigate your situation," Robert explained. "Richard, your last 3 business ventures didn't just fail, they failed spectacularly. You're currently $700,000 in debt. Your house has a second mortgage. Your credit cards are maxed out. You've borrowed money from friends that you can't pay back." Richard's face went from red to purple. "You had no right to investigate our private." "And, Patricia," Robert continued, ignoring the interruption. Your spending habits have made everything worse. Designer clothes you can't afford. Country club memberships you can barely pay. Luxury vacations charged to credit cards with 20% interest. You've been living far beyond your means for years, pretending to have wealth you don't actually have. The whispers around the room grew louder. Guests were looking at Patricia and Richard with new eyes, seeing through the expensive clothes and confident attitudes to the desperate, broke people underneath. Olivia wasn't your daughter-in-law, Robert said, his voice hard as steel. She was your escape plan, your financial rescue. You've been circling her like sharks for months, trying to figure out how to get your hands on her money. And tonight, when she finally stood up to you, you showed your true nature. Patricia's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed onto a nearby chair to keep from falling, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone whose carefully constructed lies were falling apart in front of everyone they knew. Richard tried one last, desperate move. This is ridiculous. We're her family. Families help each other. She should want to help us. Oh, help you? Robert's laugh was cold and bitter. She already has helped you. She paid for your vacation. She bought you a car. She's been generous and kind, despite your cruelty. And you repaid her kindness by assaulting her and trying to steal her home. Robert turned away from Patricia and Richard, like they were no longer worth his attention. His eyes found Daniel, still sitting at that table, with his head in his hands, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. Daniel Ashford, Robert said, and Daniel's head jerked up like he'd been shocked. Stand up. Daniel stood slowly, his legs shaking. He looked terrified, guilty, and broken all at once. Do you love your wife? Robert asked, simply. Or do you love your parents' approval more? Enna. The question hung in the air like a knife. Every single person in that ballroom waited for the answer. I held my breath from my spot by the door, my heart pounding so hard, I thought everyone could hear it. Daniel's face crumpled. Tears started streaming down his cheeks as he looked around the room at all the watching faces. At his parents standing there exposed and humiliated. At Thomas looking at him with disappointment. At the empty space where I should have been standing. I love Olivia, he said, his voice breaking. I love her more than anything. Then why didn't you protect her? Robert's voice wasn't angry now. It was sad, almost pitying. Why did you stand there silent while your mother demanded her property? Why didn't you move when your mother raised her hand? Why did you let the woman you claim to love run out of here in tears, while you did nothing? I don't know, Daniel sobbed, his whole body shaking. I froze. I'm a coward. I've always been a coward when it comes to my parents. They've controlled me my whole life, and I never learned how to stand up to them. I thought if I just kept the peace, if I just stayed quiet, everything would work itself out eventually. But it didn't work out, Thomas said quietly. It got worse. We all watched it get worse. I tried to warn you, Daniel. I told you they were going too far. Now, Daniel turned to face the room, tears and snot running down his face, in a way that would have embarrassed him any other time. But right now, he looked past caring about his image. You're right, he said to everyone. To no one. To the empty air where I should have been. I failed her. I've been failing her for months. Every time my parents insulted her. Every time they pressured her. Every time they made her feel small. I said nothing. I made excuses. I told myself they would change. That they just needed time. But the truth is, I was too scared to choose. Too scared to lose my parents' love. Even though they've only ever loved the version of me that does exactly what they want. He looked at Robert with desperate eyes. Where is she? Is Olivia okay? Please, I need to talk to her. I need to apologize. Olivia has already left, Robert said firmly. She's filing for separation. She needs time and space away from all of this. Away from you. To decide what she wants for her future. The word separation hit Daniel like a physical blow. He staggered backward, catching himself on the table. No, please. I can fix this. I can change. Maybe you can, Robert said. But that's not your decision to make right now. Olivia gets to decide if and when she's ready to hear from you. And frankly, after what I witnessed tonight, I'm not sure you deserve another chance. Patricia let out a wail from across the room. This is all falling apart. Daniel, tell them. Tell them we're family. Tell them we deserve. You deserve nothing, Thomas said, rounding on his mother with fury. I had never seen from gentle Thomas before. I'm ashamed to be your son. I'm ashamed that I share your last name. What you did tonight was evil. Cruel and evil. And I don't care if you're struggling with money. That doesn't give you the right to abuse someone who's been nothing but good to you. Patricia collapsed into a chair, her face in her hands, her expensive dress rumpled and stained with tears and champagne someone had spilled. Richard stood frozen beside her, all his bluster and confidence gone, leaving just a tired old man who had gambled everything and lost. Robert's lawyers stepped forward and handed several documents to Patricia and Richard. These are restraining orders, Jennifer Walsh explained in a crisp, professional voice. You are not to contact Olivia Chen in any way. No calls, no texts, no emails, no showing up at her home or workplace. If you violate these orders, you will be arrested. Additionally, Mrs. Ashford, if you don't sign these documents agreeing to these terms, we will be pressing criminal charges for assault. The choice is yours. 222. Patricia's hands shook as she took the pen and signed her name, her signature nothing like the elegant loops she usually made. Richard signed too, his face grey and defeated. The party was completely over now. Guests began filing out quietly, many of them looking back at the scene, like they couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. Tomorrow, this would be all over social media. Everyone would know what happened. Patricia and Richard's reputation was destroyed. Robert turned and walked toward the door where I was hiding. He must have known I was there the whole time. When he reached me, he put a gentle hand on my shoulder. Let's go home, he said softly. 3 days later, I sat in a quiet cafe, across from Daniel. Robert and Grace both insisted on coming with me, sitting at a table nearby, close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough to give us privacy. Daniel looked terrible. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. He hadn't shaved. His clothes were wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept since the party. Thank you for meeting me, he said quietly. I touched my cheek where the bruise had faded, from purple to yellow. I'm only here because Robert convinced me you deserved a chance to speak. But I'm not making any promises, Daniel. I know. He took a shaky breath. I'm not here to ask you to come back. I'm not here to ask you to forgive me. I'm here to tell you that you were right about everything. My parents are toxic. I've been a coward. And I failed you when you needed me most. I said nothing, just waited. I've moved out of our apartment, Daniel continued. I'm staying with Thomas. I've started therapy. I'm working on understanding why I let my parents control me for so long, why I couldn't stand up for the woman I love. I don't know if I can change, but I'm going to try. That's good, I said carefully. You should do that for yourself, not for me. I know. His voice cracked. Olivia, I don't expect you to take me back. I don't expect you to trust me. But I need you to know that losing you made me realize what a coward I've been my whole life. And whether we stay married or get divorced, I'm going to become someone better. Someone who would have defended you. Someone worthy of the love you gave me. Tears burned in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I hope you do become that person, Daniel. I really do. But right now, I need time to heal. I need space to remember who I am, without your parents' voices in my head telling me I'm not good enough. You're more than good enough, Daniel whispered. You're extraordinary, and I'm sorry I ever made you doubt that. We sat in silence for a moment. There was nothing left to say. Maybe someday we would find our way back to each other. Maybe Daniel would do the work and become the partner I needed. Or maybe this was the end of our story. Either way, I knew I would be okay. 2 weeks after the party, I stood in my apartment, looking out at the city lights. The apartment Patricia had demanded. The home I had bought, with my own hard work and determination. It felt peaceful now, like the weight that had been pressing down on me for months had finally lifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Dinner this weekend? Want to celebrate your new contract with Anderson Industries? My dinner. One dinner. One dinner. One. I smiled and typed back. Yes. Thank you for everything. Proud of you, he responded immediately. Grace appeared from the kitchen carrying 2 mugs of tea. Anderson Industries, huh? That's huge, Olivia. It is, I agreed, taking the mug from her. Things are really looking up for the company. And for you, Grace added, settling onto the couch beside me. You look happier, lighter. She was right. I did feel lighter. The bruise on my face had healed completely. The pain in my chest had faded to a dull ache that grew smaller each day. I was remembering what it felt like to wake up without dread, to work without the constant worry about what Patricia and Richard would demand next. My success was my own. My apartment was my own. My life was my own. And I would never let anyone take that away from me again. Outside my window, the city glowed with a million lights, each one representing someone else's dream, someone else's struggle, someone else's victory. I had fought for mine, and won, not because someone rescued me, but because I finally learned to rescue myself. And that was worth more than any amount of money could ever buy.